as you can see, that has dried down actually really nice. So now it's had a nice bit of time to dry. What we could do, we can get our blade here, and as early as this, because I mean that, strangely for some reason that one has actually gone down rather nicely. What we could do is with our blade, okay, let's get you in a bit more closer if we can. Okay, with our blade we want to get our recessed panel lines and give them a cut, okay, as you can hopefully see there. Okay, just need to orientate this without it going off camera. Okay, and then we can slice down like so, and we're just lightly pressing down, you know, literally using the weight of the actual blade, okay, to do the work. Right, and then what we could do is we can come along with the Mr. Mark softener, okay, to hopefully really kind of get this stuff to work right in to where we've cut, okay, because what can happen now is this decal solution can actually get under the decal, get into that recess panel line and really suck down the actual decal, okay, to basically give us that sprayed on look, okay, because you know the decal's not just flat, it's going into the nooks, the crannies, the lumps and the bumps, okay, which makes it look more realistic. One thing I have noticed with these decaling solutions as well, because as I've said, I've not used them that much, they do appear to kind of eat at your paintwork a little bit more than say our micro salt and set. For an example, just underneath here I've got a little bit of a mark, right, and what's happened is the bits of our our Mr. Mark setter and softener has kind of dripped down to the bottom, okay, and it's literally dripped down, and you've had this little pool of the the Mr. Mark softener and set, okay, pooling up, and it's kind of allowed the Mr. Mark range to literally eat into our paintwork a little bit, and it's only a little bit of a mark, but still it's something we're going to have to tidy up, which is a bit of a pain. So you know, try and be careful with where this stuff pulls up, you know, kind of just think, you know, if I apply some of the solution to this decal here along the side, you know, the gravity is going to send it down and potentially pull up at the bottom, and which could leave a mark, okay, so just try and keep that in mind with this stuff, which is a bit of a downside to our Japanese decaling solutions. So let's have a look at this, and I can actually show you what's kind of going on with this decal now. Okay, and I don't know how well you can see it, but it is showing signs of wrinkling up, okay, in the recessed areas. See if we can change the light maybe. Ooh, no, that's not going to work. Okay, so basically, I mean, in the recessed areas, it's showing signs of wrinkling up. That's because the decaling solution, you know, has got into the recess and got under the decal, and it's starting to wrinkle up there. Okay, and one thing about this solution, it seems to not want to kind of go evenly, it seems to want to pull up in areas. So I do like to kind of, where it's pulled up, just very lightly give it a bit of a wipe, okay, because what happens is where it pulls up, you know, it really goes nuts and wrinkles up in that one little spot where it's just kind of, you know, pulled up. So I do like to try and keep mixing it about, but being careful not to, you know, apply too much pressure to the decal that you end up kind of like moving the decal, creasing the decal, and, you know, messing around with its process while it's wrinkling up. So just remember that. Alright, I'll just zoom you in a little bit, and hopefully what you can see is the decal has gone into our recessed panel lines now after it's had a nice bit of time to dry. Now it isn't quite 100% to my likings all in there, but what you keep doing is you can just keep kind of coming along. Once it's dried, you know, maybe give it another bit of a cut. Okay, not quite dry, so I won't cut at that. But basically, you know, once it's dried a bit more, you know, you can come along, recut, okay, reapply some more Mr. Mark softener, and just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing it for as long as you want, okay, until you've got it the way you want it, which really is to nicely have all those recessed panel lines have the decal shrunk right into it, so you can still see the recessed panel lines. Okay, so the other thing is as well, I have mentioned this before in other videos, but if Decklin Solutions, you know, leave behind a bit of a sticky substance, and it appears to be more so with these Japanese range of Decklin Solutions. So what I like to do is, just to make sure, you know, we're contaminant free, is to come along a moist cloth and just rub all over the model. Make sure it's all dry, okay, we don't want to be peeling up decals, but once it's all nice and dry, every decal, you know, a wet cotton rag, okay, and you just wipe around nice and lightly, removing all that sticky substance from off the surface that the Decklin Solutions have left behind. Once that's done, you're all good to go and go off and seal in all your decals with about 2 to 3 coats of gloss. Once that's done, okay, you want to then leave the whole thing overnight to dry, and properly go hard, rock hard, and cure and properly dry, so that the next day you can come along and do all your weathering side of things. Okay, so that is the Decklin for our Supermarine Spitfire. A bit of a final conclusion. I don't know 100% what the facts are, but it just seems like there aren't enough decals that come with the kit. Okay, it's almost as if there's a bit of an afterthought going on, because literally I have got all the decals onto this model now, and although we've got our markings going on, we don't seem to have much in the lines of stencils, which although it might be accurate, I don't know, but it just seems a bit light for my liking. Okay, I'm sure there's more stencils than this, although don't hold me to it, I'm just guessing here. That's the one thing about these decals, and as I say, you know, I'm still experimenting and playing around with the Japanese decals, you know, so hopefully I'll have played around with them enough to get a proper nice procedure with dealing with the Japanese decals. But all in all, yes, they do seem thick, and you've got to be careful on the whole wrinkling up process, but admittedly, because they wrinkle up so much, they actually do, once you've got them down and you've got them all nicely into all your recessed panel lines, they do really kind of, in the end, have a really nice sprayed on look. Okay, even though people say they're thick, and they are quite thick, quite tough, but in the end, once you kind of get those solutions on it, they do have that really nice sprayed on look. Okay, so that's the Decklin stage, and I'll be back with some nice weathering next. Right then, as I've said, you know, this has now been nicely sealed in with, you know, a good, what I think was about 3 coats of gloss, so looking and feeling nice and smooth. Right, I've left it overnight so it can properly dry, go rock hard and cure, so that when we come to the weathering stage, all our decals, all our paintwork is all nicely and protected. So now, there was a way of weathering our panel lines that I used to do, but then over time I've kind of found certain problems with well, basically what it was, I used to use the Flurry Models weathering washes which are clay based, and basically you just brush it all over the model, right? You don't mess about, you just brush it all over, and then you get a lot of kitchen paper towels and wipe it all away, and basically it just leaves the wash into the recessed panel lines, which does work, you know, and if it's, you can do it that way if you want to do it that way, but I did find that although it's easy to apply, you know, to get it off properly and professionally, I mean, you've got to come round with like cotton wool buds, and you've got to get into all the nooks and crannies to like remove all the wash that you've just plastered everywhere, and it takes quite a bit of time. And you know, if you've had some bad decals, it can get under decals. Maybe your spray work was a little bit off, and maybe you had, say, a bit of cracking in places. You know, that wash is just going to go right into those cracks and really make a mess of stuff. And any kind of imperfections that you might have that the wash can get into, you know, it makes it look pretty damn bad. Although those kind of things are kind of rare to happen, you know, I do still think that you spend so much time actually trying to remove the wash, you basically spend the same amount of time as if you would use oils, in my opinion, and I do feel you have more control over oils, and you can do one or two little things extra with the oils. So I've started using oils as my weathering wash, so I'm going to like show you now how I do this. Well, first off, let's make up a mixture. Yes, this is probably why a lot of people don't like to do this, okay, is because, you know, you have to come along. Okay, we've got ourselves some oils here, which we'll start off by getting some of our Mk.I production thinners for washes, okay, and we're just going to pour a couple of drops of this into a little palette here. Okay, just a couple of drops, and what we want to do is we want to get this now thinned down, our oils, to a nice consistency for using as a wash. So we can get a little bit of our black oil here, okay, and we can mix that in nicely. That looks good. Put our lid back on, and then what we want to do is, you know, we don't want our panel lines to be a solid black, okay, because you know, we want to give it a bit of a dirty look. So by adding a bit of wash brown, right, we can have a really dark, dirty brown look, okay, to our whole oil wash, rather than just a solid black, which admittedly I think it's going to take a bit more, shall we say, brown than, hold on, I don't want to contaminate my brown up here. Yeah, it's going to probably take a bit more brown than it's going to take black, okay, and we need a bit more of our Mk.I production. Okay, so give this a good mix, make sure there's no lumps or bumps left from our oils, and let's make ourselves our own wash. Right, now that's looking a nice dark brown, okay. So you get it the colour the way you want it, okay, so you don't need to exactly follow me, but what you want is the thinness of this paint needs to be thin enough so as to give us nice capillary action, but not so thin that you don't have any colour to the panel line. So what we do here now, we want to get a decent brush for this, okay, so I'm going to get my Series 7 out, and I'm going to get me a treble 0 out, okay, a nice fine paintbrush, okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to get some of this wash and we're going to see how well it goes on. So we just get some of this wash on our paintbrush, we find ourselves a little panel line and we give it a little dab. And looking at that, I think it could do with a little bit more black and a little bit more thinners. Okay, this is probably the one kind of problem is compared to the other method. I mean, the other method, it's already in a bottle, it's good to go, there's no messing around. Whereas with this method, you're making up your own wash, which some people might not like. But as I say, I do prefer this method. There we go, just mixing it up, a bit more black. There we go. Right, so that's mixed up and that's looking a little blacker, a little more harsher and dirtier, and it's a little bit thinner. So hopefully we can get some capillary action. So let's bring you in on our wing here, maybe, and then we can kind of show you this actually going down. Sorry for playing around with the camera. Right, but here we go. We're just gonna tap our panel lines here, okay, with our wash. You don't want to have so much on the paintbrush that you're just going to have a blob go splat onto your model, but you just want to touch it just in the panel lines like so, which I don't think you're quite seeing that on camera. So let's see if we can get you in a little bit more. Right. So I'm going to do a bit more of this and hopefully you're going to see that a little tap into a panel line and the capillary action just takes it wonderfully almost everywhere. Okay, you don't have to like paint the panel lines itself, just tap it, okay, and the capillary action just takes it nicely all the way along your panel lines. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go off and do all these panel lines for this one wing and just show you. Right, basically I've just gone all the way over this with our homemade little oil weathering wash, right, and what we've done is we've just filled in our recessed panel lines, hopefully as you could probably see, just to kind of give us that first layer of weathering. Okay, now as you can probably tell, okay, it's not going to be something that you're going to do you know, mark free. As you can see, you know, there are a couple of marks here where I've made mistakes. You know, it's gonna happen. You're gonna make mistakes, even if it's, you know, I suppose the steadier your hand, the fewer you're going to do, but you know, there are going to be mistakes, but that's no big deal, right? Because what you can simply do is come along with a cotton wool bud, like so. You want to make sure this is dry, so I don't really want to be touching this, so I'm going to try and find a dry spot. Okay, but what you can plain and simply do is just give it a rub with your cotton wool bud. Okay, and rub away those marks. If you're finding that you've got some marks that are a little bit stubborn, you could add a bit of airbrush cleaner maybe, or actually add some of the Mk.I production thinners for washes on the end of your cotton wool bud, and that should wipe away any stubborn mistakes you may have done. But really, I mean, that is it. I mean, because you're only going to be doing light mistakes, like on here, I mean, there's just a few little kind of mistakes really, and that's just going to need a bit of a rub. And in some ways, if you rub in the direction of airflow, you could actually end up making some nice streaks accidentally out of that. So you know, you might want to do a little rub, maybe accidentally make a bit of a streak from a mistake, and you've added some extra weather into that by accident. So you know, just keep that in mind. And so what I need to do now, I need to go over all the model and everything, and you know, get that to that standard. Now a little bit of advice as well. I mean, you might want to do it this way, you might not want to, but what you can do is say what I've just done here, done one wing, okay, and give it a bit of chance to dry, and then rub out all the mistakes, and then maybe do another section and another section. Okay, it's going to take a little bit longer, but if you went across and did the whole model, you know, you've then got to kind of go around the whole model and try and find all your mistakes, which then you could accidentally miss one. So by doing it by section, you can see your mistakes clearer and easier, and there's not much kind of going on, so I know I can get all these little mistakes here, and you know, I know I'm not going to accidentally leave any mistakes. So I'm going to crack on with this. I've just gone around the whole of that model using that wash technique, and I think you can actually see a lot better, okay, underneath, where basically, you know, because it's a lighter colour underneath, you know, it shows out these panel lines a little better. But the top's all done. And you know, I've wiped all the top down, so all the top is completely done. I mean, underneath I've just got to wipe that down. But another thing you can do as well, I also used to use the Flurry Models wash to do landing gear. I also then kind of went off and made my own washes with kind of like water and ink and that kind of stuff. But I do think I've actually found what is, I personally feel, is, you know, the better way of doing washes for, you know, your landing gear and your wheels and stuff. So I'm just going to show you what you can do. Okay, again, same sort of technique as our panel line wash. You're basically doing the same, apart from we haven't got like recessed panel lines. It's more like corners and raised edges where we can just tap our oil wash that we've made right into the corners, okay, and it should give us a nice bit of a wash going on to create, you know, illusions of shadows, dirt, grime, okay, and just to liven it up from it being its plain self, shall we say. Okay, just like so. And the cool thing about this is, you know, you've only got to like just tap it with the tip of your paintbrush. Okay, you don't actually have to do painting. So hopefully you're kind of seeing that there, sort of like bringing out the corners and the edges of this landing gear, okay, and kind of leaving it, you know, pretty nice and clean, should we say. Because I mean, whenever you kind of look at landing gear, especially modern landing gear, you'll find that they do keep them really clean, and it's only like in the nooks and crannies where, you know, you might see a bit of dirt, or really, I mean, mainly it's where you're gonna see shadows. Okay, and that's what we're doing here. Instead of, like, as I would do in the past, just whack a complete wash all over and then maybe tidy it up with a bit of cotton wool bud, that's what I kind of used to do. I'm basically just coming along and leaving it all nice and clean, but I'm specifically targeting those nooks, those crannies, those bolts, those little areas. Okay, and we could do the same with say our silver landing gear here. I mean, you know, we can just really just tap a bit of a corner of a raised area, and it just flows nicely. And as I say, I mean, the cool thing about this is you can wipe it away. You know, if you make those mistakes, just get a cotton wool bud and simply wipe it away, so you don't have to worry about it drying and staying that way. If you've made that mistake, no big deal, just give it a wipe. Okay, and this is nice little subtle changes that just livens up the landing gear a bit, and I personally think it makes it look, one, better, and in some ways, I mean, if you've got a steady hand, it makes it easier, because I mean, coming along and slapping on a wash, whether it's a Flurry Models wash or a homemade ink and water wash or something like that, you know, I mean, you're still probably going to want to rub it down, clean it up a bit, okay, and make it look clean in flat surfaces, and just leaving that wash kind of maybe in the raised, recessed corners, lumps and bumps areas. Whereas this, it's just you paint it on, and once you've painted it on, you might have to do a little bit of a cleanup, but the job's done. You know, I do think it is quicker, and if you've got that steady hand, can be easier than the other methods that I've shown before, and I do think it looks nicer and better. You can also come along, I mean, we've got landing gear here, I mean, you could come along and use something like German orchard or something, you know, those kind of colours to represent a bit of an oily, streaky kind of colour going on, just to kind of add that little bit of an extra colour here and there, just to liven it up. You also can do your wheel wells the same, which, you know, I've basically done just underneath here, got all them done. So yeah, that is for all that. Apart from that, I just need to kind of do the rest, tidy up, and then I'll show you some more weathering.